The leather steering wheel under my cold hands felt like a barrier between life and death. If the heavy oak gates of the Montgomery estate swung open right now, the security guards would find us. My hand rests only 3 inches from her bare collarbone. I can feel the radiating heat of her skin. It is a terrifying warmth. To the rest of the city, she is a tenured force of nature. She is the crown jewel of a multi-million-dollar banking dynasty. She never lets her pristine composure slip. But right now, she is only a woman holding her breath in my passenger seat. She is silently pleading with me to ruin her. The air inside the luxury sedan is thick with the scent of dried lavender and aged paper. The bitter aroma of her cold black coffee hangs in the small space. Every heavy tick of the vintage clock on the dashboard is a countdown. It is a constant reminder that we are running out of time. I am her poor chauffeur. She is my wealthy boss. The mahogany console between us has become a dangerous fault line. It is waiting to swallow us both. I can hear the distant chatter of the security guards outside the gates. They are laughing in the freezing winter wind. Inside this narrow cabin, our world has shrunk. The space between our shallow breaths is too small. Her slender fingers tremble as she climbs from the back seat. Her silk dress rustles in the dark. The fabric is a delicate pale cream color. It catches the dim green light of the dashboard. I look into the rearview mirror. Her large forest green eyes are wide. They are filled with a sudden panic. Her pupils are dilated. I see her lower lip tremble slightly. She reaches out. Her fingers are burning hot. She wraps them around my hand on the gear shift. The sudden touch is electric. It sends a jolt straight to my chest. My heart hammers against my ribs. I was her poor chauffeur, but she held my hand and whispered, "Drive us somewhere we can hide." My pulse jumps. I look into her eyes. The mask of the perfect heiress is completely gone. She is only a woman pleading with me. She is asking me to steal her away. If they see us, I will lose my job. I will lose the money I need to survive. But the risk does not matter anymore. I shift the car into drive. The tires grip the wet asphalt. We slide into the dark, rainy night. The storm wraps around the car. It seals us inside our own private world. We are running away from her wealth. We are running away from my poverty. Every second in this car feels like borrowed time. But I will keep driving. I will go as far as she wants. The road ahead is dark. The consequences will be terrible. But her hand is still holding mine. That is the only truth that matters now. My life has been defined by the heavy weight of winter and empty pockets. I grew up in the slums of the lower city. The damp cold always found a way through our thin walls. My father was sick for 5 long years. The medical bills piled up like a mountain of ice. I had to abandon my dreams. I had to quit my engineering classes. I had to take any job that paid. That was how I became a chauffeur. I was hired by the Montgomery family. They are the wealthiest dynasty in the state. They own the banks. They own the high-rise towers. They own the people who work for them. I was given a cheap, dark uniform. The fabric was rough and thin. It did not keep out the winter frost. My boots clicked on the cold gravel driveway every morning. I stood by the door of the heavy black sedan. I waited for her. She was the daughter of the house. She was 24 years old. She lived in a world of silk and gold. Every morning she walked down the stone steps. She never looked at me. I was just the man who opened her door. I was the silent shadow in the front seat. I watched her in the rearview mirror. I saw the sad expression in her forest green eyes. She always looked tired. Her father was planning a business marriage for her. She was a pawn in their corporate game. She had no freedom. Her life was a gilded cage. I understood that feeling. I was trapped by my poverty. She was trapped by her wealth. I spent hours in the driver's seat. My jaw was always clenched. I had to hide my thoughts. I had to hide my growing obsession. I memorized the way her chestnut hair caught the morning sun. I knew when she was happy and when she was ready to cry. A pulse would jump in my throat every time she stepped into the car. She was too far out of reach. We lived in different universes. I earned in a year what her dress cost. But my heart did not care about the numbers. The smell of her bergamot perfume would linger in the cabin for hours after she left. It was a sweet, torturous reminder of the distance between us. Then came the rainy nights. She started asking for longer drives. She did not want to go home to her empty mansion. She wanted to watch the rain fall on the river. I would park the car by the dark docks. We would sit in silence for hours. The only sound was the rhythmic clicking of the windshield wipers. She never spoke to me, but I could feel her presence behind me. I could feel the heat radiating from her body. The air inside the car became charged with an unspoken tension. I knew it was dangerous. I knew I should resign, but I needed the money, and I needed to be near her. I was addicted to the borrowed time. My life was not my own. I was raised to be a trophy. My father viewed me as an asset. I was a deal to be closed. I was promised to a man I despised. He was a wealthy heir. He was cold and arrogant. Every dinner with him felt like a slow suffocation. I wore expensive dresses. I wore diamond necklaces that felt like heavy chains around my neck. The gold ring on my finger was ice cold. It was a constant reminder of my lack of choice. I spent my days in a daze of polite smiles and empty small talk. I felt completely hollow inside. The only time I could breathe was in the back of the sedan. The car was my only sanctuary, and Julian was my silent guardian. He was 26 years old. He was tall and structured. His dark curls were always messy. He wore a cheap uniform, but he carried himself with a quiet dignity. He never tried to speak to me. He kept his eyes on the road. But I always watched him. I watched the sharp line of his jaw. I watched his strong hands on the steering wheel. I felt a strange comfort in his presence. He was the only real thing in my artificial world. I began to notice the small details. I saw the tired squint in his amber brown eyes. I knew he was working long shifts. I knew he was struggling. My father treated him like a machine. But to me, he was a lifeline. When the pressure at home became too much, I would ask him to drive. I had no destination. I just wanted to escape the mansion. We would park by the dark river. The rain would drum a steady beat against the glass. I would sit in the back. He would sit in the front. We never spoke, but the silence was not empty. It was filled with a growing, agonizing tension. I could feel my cheeks flush when his eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. My heart would beat faster in the quiet cabin. I wanted him to look at me. I wanted him to see my desperation. I wanted to reach out and touch his broad shoulder. I wanted to feel his warmth. The contrast between my cold life and his burning intensity was too sharp. I was falling in love with my driver. It was a scandalous, ruinous desire. If my father found out, he would destroy Julian. But the danger only made the feeling stronger. I was a drowning woman, and Julian was the only one who could save me. I just had to find the courage to ask. We drove for hours through the raging storm. The highway was empty. The city was far behind us. The headlights sliced through the thick curtain of rain. The wind howled against the heavy metal doors. It felt like the storm was trying to crush the car. But inside the cabin, the air was warm and quiet. The engine hummed a steady, soothing vibration. I kept my eyes on the dark road, but my mind was entirely focused on the woman in the passenger seat. Clara had not moved. Her fingers were still wrapped tightly around mine. The car heater blew a soft stream of warm air. It smelled of old leather and sweet bergamot. The temperature inside was a safe haven against the freezing night. But the heat between our bodies was growing. It was a heavy, suffocating warmth. I could feel my chest rising and falling in time with hers. I decided to pull the car over. The visibility was too poor to continue. I steered the sedan onto a narrow, wooded dirt path. I parked under the canopy of a massive oak tree. The branches blocked some of the rain. I turned off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. The only sound was the wind shaking the trees above us. The warmth of the heater began to fade. A cold draft crept in from the window. Clara did not pull her hand away. She turned her body toward me. The leather of her seat creaked in the quiet room. I slowly turned to face her. In the dim light of the dashboard, her face was beautiful. Her forest green eyes were wide. Her pupils were dilated in the darkness. I saw her lips part slightly as she breathed. I asked her if she was cold. My voice was a low, gravelly whisper. It sounded rough in the quiet cabin. Clara shook her head. Her gaze was locked onto my mouth. The distance between us was agonizingly small. I could feel the radiating heat of her skin. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to touch her cheek. But I held back. I was still her driver. The reality of my poverty was a heavy weight on my shoulders. I could not offer her a future. I could only offer her this stolen night. Clara must have felt my hesitation. She squeezed my hand harder. Her fingers trembled against mine. She told me she was not afraid of the cold. She said she was only afraid of going back. She begged me to keep her safe. The vulnerability in her voice broke my remaining strength. I leaned in closer. Our shoulders brushed. The touch was a spark in a dry forest. We were trapped together, and neither of us wanted to escape. The cold was creeping into the car. The windows were beginning to fog up. They created a blurry barrier between us and the dark forest. Clara was shivering. The thin silk of her cream dress was not meant for a winter storm. She tried to hide her trembling, but I could feel it through her fingers. I could not bear to see her cold. I let go of her hand. For a second, she looked panicked. She thought I was pulling away, but I did not pull back. I reached into the back seat. I grabbed my heavy wool driver's coat. I draped the dark coat over her shoulders. The rough fabric was a stark contrast to her delicate dress. She wrapped herself in the heavy wool. She let out a soft, shaky sigh. The coat smelled of rain and my cheap tobacco. She did not seem to care. She pulled the collar close to her chin. She looked small inside my jacket. Her green eyes looked up at me with deep gratitude. I reached out again. My hand hovered in the air for 3 seconds. Then I placed my palm over her cold fingers. I began to rub her hands. My rough, calloused palms slid over her smooth fingers. The sound of our skin brushing was a soft rustle in the quiet cabin. Clara's eyelids fluttered. They closed as she leaned her head back against the leather headrest. Her chest rose and fell in a rapid rhythm. She let out a sharp intake of breath as my thumb traced the center of her palm. I moved slowly. I traced the delicate lines of her hand. I felt the ice-cold gold ring on her finger. I wanted to slide that ring off. I wanted to erase her family's claim on her. I brought her hands close to my mouth. I blew a stream of warm breath over her shivering fingers. Clara's body trembled at the touch. She opened her eyes. The depth of her green gaze was swimming with raw, unspoken desire. Our faces were only inches apart. I could feel her rapid pulse fluttering in her wrist. We were only a man and a woman in a cold car. The tension was a heavy, sweet agony. I wanted to lean down and press my lips to hers. The urge was a physical ache in my throat. But the push and pull remained. I pulled my hands back slowly. I gave her space. Clara let out a disappointed sigh, but she kept the coat wrapped tightly around her. The promise of more was hanging in the air. We both knew the fire had been lit. The storm began to settle. The heavy rain turned into a soft, steady patter against the roof. The wind died down to a gentle whisper. The windows of the sedan were completely fogged over. We were entirely hidden from the outside world. The space felt like a tiny wooden cabin in the middle of a dark forest. Clara sat close to me. She had pulled my heavy wool coat over both of our shoulders. We were sharing the warmth. Her shoulder was pressed tightly against mine. I could feel the soft curves of her body through the thick fabric. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small silver lighter. The faint click of the metal wheel was loud in the silence. I lit a small candle she had kept in the console. The tiny orange flame danced on the dashboard. It cast a warm, flickering glow over her face. I saw the tears shining in her eyes. She did not look like an heiress anymore. She looked like a lost child. She began to speak. Her voice was quiet and raw. She talked about her childhood in the massive mansion. She described the hollow silence of her family's dinner table. She spoke of her mother's cold expectations and her father's demanding rules. She was always lonely. She was surrounded by wealth, but she had never felt loved. She told me she had spent her life trying to please everyone else, but she was tired of being a trophy. She wanted to be real. Her words cut through my heart. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to protect her from the coldness of her world. I began to talk too. I told her about my father. I spoke of the long nights in the hospital corridors. I described the crushing weight of the debt that forced me to drive. I told her about the dreams I had to bury to survive. A soft, sad micro-smile touched her lips as I spoke. She reached out. Her delicate fingers brushed against my jaw. She felt the rough stubble of my 3-day growth. The touch was incredibly tender. It was the first time someone had touched me with such care. Our guards were completely down. The distance of class and duty had been washed away by the storm. We were two broken people finding pieces of ourselves in each other. The warmth of our pressed bodies was the only comfort in the dark. I looked into her green eyes. I saw her vulnerability. I saw her love. It was a terrifying, beautiful sight. I knew we could not go back to the way things were. We had shared too much. We had seen each other's scars. The night was growing colder, but inside the car, the fire was burning bright. We were bound together by our secrets. We were ready to face the dawn. The pale light of dawn began to seep through the fogged windows. It painted the inside of the cabin in soft shades of blue and gray. The forest outside was quiet. A single crow called out in the distance. The sound was sharp and lonely. The candle on the dashboard had burned down to a pool of cold wax. The air inside the car was freezing. Our shared warmth under the wool coat was the only thing keeping the chill away. I looked down at Clara. She was awake. She was staring at my mouth. Her forest green eyes were intense. They scanned my lips with a desperate focus. I felt my throat swallow hard. My heart was beating a rapid, frantic rhythm against my ribs. The distance between our faces was less than an inch. I could feel the heat of her breath mixing with mine in the cold air. Our lips were almost touching. The anticipation was a physical ache. It was a sweet, torturous agony. I wanted to close the gap. I wanted to lose myself in her. Clara leaned in. Her hand slid up my neck. Her warm fingers tangled in my messy dark curls. She tilted her head back slightly. Her lips parted in a silent invitation. The touch sent a wave of heat straight to my core. I leaned down. My lips brushed against hers. It was a feather-light contact. The sensation was electric. It was the peak of a mountain we had been climbing for months. The rules, the debts, her father, and the entire world disappeared. There was only her. Suddenly, a sharp, buzzing sound shattered the silence. The cell phone on the dashboard began to vibrate. It slid across the plastic with a loud, aggressive hum. The screen flashed with her father's name. The golden letters of the caller ID were a harsh intrusion of reality. The spell was broken. Clara flinched as if she had been struck. She pulled her hand back from my hair. The cold morning light hit her face, revealing the sudden panic in her eyes. I stared at the vibrating phone. The harsh light was a reminder of the barrier between us. We were still on borrowed time. The world was waiting to tear us apart. Clara looked at the phone, then at me. Her lower lip trembled. She did not answer the call, but she did not lean back in either. The physical tension remained, vibrating in the narrow space like a taut wire. We were suspended in the agony of what could have been. The distance had returned, but the memory of her lips brushing mine was burned into my skin. I knew we could not survive the suspense much longer. The breaking point was coming. The black sedan idled in the shadows near the massive gates of her family estate. The golden lights of the mansion looked cold in the gray afternoon rain. The storm had returned, lashing against the glass with a renewed fury. The phone had been ringing for hours. It was a constant, aggressive demand for her return. I sat behind the wheel. My jaw was clenched so hard my teeth ached. I looked at Clara in the passenger seat. She was refusing to move. Her head was down. Her shoulders were shaking. I could not bear the silence anymore. I hit the steering wheel with the heel of my palm. The heavy thud was a loud explosion of frustration in the quiet car. I told her she had to go. My voice was a broken, gravelly rasp. I told her I was just a poor driver. I said I could not save her from her family. I told her she had a wealthy life waiting for her. I said we would both be ruined if she stayed. I was trying to be strong. I was trying to protect her by pushing her away. But Clara did not listen. She turned to me. Her cheeks were flushed. Her green eyes were blazing with a desperate, wild anger. She reached out. She grabbed my hand. Her hot tears fell onto my cold knuckles. The touch was painful in its intensity. She looked directly into my eyes. She told me she did not care about the money. She said she did not care about the mansion or the business marriage. She yelled that she would rather starve with me than live in a golden cage without her. I love you, Julian. The words finally broke through her lips. It was a desperate, crying confession. The emotional dam had shattered. The truth was out in the open. It was a beautiful, terrifying sound. My heart stopped. I stared at her. The strength I had tried to maintain melted into dust. I could not fight the truth anymore. I could not pretend I did not feel the same. I pulled her to me, my arms wrapped around her waist. I pulled her flush against my chest. Clara wrapped her arms tightly around my neck. She buried her face in my shoulder. She was sobbing. Her hot breath warmed my cold skin. I buried my face in her chestnut hair. I whispered my own confession. I told her I loved her. I said I had loved her from the first moment she sat in my car. The relief was a physical wave of warmth. The danger was still there. The consequences would be severe. But in that moment of surrender, we did not care. We were no longer hiding our hearts. We were together. We left the luxury black sedan parked in a public lot near the train station. We left the key on the dashboard. We left her family's wealth behind. Clara took off her diamond jewelry. She left the heavy gold engagement ring on the leather seat. She kept only my wool coat wrapped around her shoulders. We walked onto the wet gravel of the platform. The cold rain fell on our faces, but we did not feel the chill. We were holding hands. Our fingers were locked together in a tight, unyielding grip. A train whistled in the distance. The sound was a low, mournful call through the gray mist. It was our ticket to a new life. We had no plan. We had very little money. I had only my savings and her small bag. We were going to a small town far away. I would find work. I would drive trucks or work in a factory. It did not matter. We were going to a place where no one knew her name. We were going to a place where we could be real. Clara looked at the approaching train. Her face was pale, but she was not crying anymore. A soft, genuine smile touched her lips. It was the first time I had ever seen her look truly happy. Her green eyes were bright with a peaceful resolve. She looked up at me. I saw the absolute trust in her gaze. I felt a wave of protective strength rise in my chest. I would work myself to the bone to keep that smile on her face. We stepped onto the train as the heavy metal doors slid open. The cabin was warm and smelled of hot steam and old metal. We sat in a quiet corner by the window, watching the rain run down the glass. The train began to move. The station slid away into the thick gray mist. The towering skyscrapers of her family's empire was left behind. We had nothing. We were poor. But as she rested her head on my shoulder, I felt wealthier than any billionaire. The realization was sweet and deep. We were no longer living on borrowed time. We were no longer hiding in the shadows of a luxury car. We had broken the golden cages of our pasts. The road ahead would be hard. We would have to struggle to survive. We would have to build a new life from the dirt. But we were facing the future together. Her hand was warm in mine. The steady, rhythmic hum of the train tracks was a beautiful lullaby for our new beginning. We had escaped the mansion. We were finally free. 6 months had passed since the night we ran away. We lived in a tiny, wooden cabin near the mountains. The setting was simple and quiet. Outside, a soft spring rain pattered against the tin roof. The sound was a peaceful, steady rhythm. Inside, a small wood stove crackled. It filled the single room with a cozy, dry warmth. I sat on a worn wooden chair by the window. I looked out at my old blue pickup truck parked in the driveway. I was a driver for a local lumber mill now. The work was hard. My hands were rougher than ever, but the money was ours. Clara walked over to me. She was wearing a simple cotton sweater. Her rich chestnut hair was down, falling over her shoulders in soft waves. She looked beautiful. The pale, tired look of the heiress was completely gone. Her forest green eyes crinkled at the corners as she smiled at me. She sat on my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck. I pulled a simple wool blanket over our shoulders. We shared the warmth in our small sanctuary. I reached out. My hand gently cupped her cheek. The skin was warm and soft. I looked into her eyes. There was no fear, no guilt, and no secrets. We were no longer living on borrowed time. Every minute we had was ours to keep. I leaned in. My lips met hers in a deep, sweet, and slow kiss. It was a kiss of absolute peace. It was the final destination of the long, dark road we had traveled. I remembered the night we escaped. I remembered when I was her poor chauffeur, but she held my hand and whispered, "Drive us somewhere we can hide." The rain continued to fall outside, washing away the remnants of our old lives. We had left the wealth, the luxury cars, and the golden cages behind. We had found our own stillness in the storm. We had found our home and each other. Our love had survived the coldest winter. Now we had a bright spring ahead of us. We were finally safe. Thank you for listening to our story. If you felt the slow burn tension of our journey, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with your favorite moment from our hidden drives. Your support keeps these stories alive. If you loved this, you will adore our next story about a quiet artist who falls for his wealthy patron's daughter. It is another tale of forbidden desire. Until next time, remember that some boundaries are meant to be broken. Let the rain wash the world away. Find your own sanctuary in the dark. We will see you very soon in our next beautiful and intense slow burn tale. Keep listening to our quiet hearts and stay safe. Goodbye.